all the games I used to play in my younger, wilder days. The game of clubs and tees had never crossed my mind.
Welcome into another episode of the Turn Fantasy Golf Podcast. I'm Andrew Putters with my partner here, Joe Nicely from Rotoballer.com. Joe starting the year off with a bang, 21st place in the $200 single entry on DraftKings. I'm going to share some thoughts on the tournament, but go ahead. And how was your weekend?
It was good, man. Good. Solid start to 2022. Nice to kind of knock the rust off and knocking out articles over at Rotoballer.com. Just kind of want to take a second to tell people about our PGA Premium over there. Tons of great content. You can go to Rotoballer.com, sign up using the promo code NICE, and you'll save some money through the Tour Championship, just to kind of get that out of the way. But yeah, man, really fun start. Kind of a crazy tournament, record-breaking scores. It was pretty nuts. You and I talked about that a little bit this morning. I'm sure we'll touch on it here in a second, but it's fun, man. I really like Kapalua. I like the golf tournament. I like how you kind of ease into the year over there with an easy track. It was nice to get things going in DFS on Draftkings. So really looking forward to it, man. Looking forward to the full season. Not putting anything on the back burner, but definitely putting DFS to the forefront as far as everything I'm doing with PGA content every week. My number one priority this year is going to be focusing on actually building good lineups, making good decisions on DraftKings, and trying to win some money, man.
I like it, Joe. What's your promo code over there if they want to sign up for the PGA Premium?
Yeah, over at Rotoballer.com, promo code NICE, N-I-C-E. That'll save you 10% over there.
There you go. Rotoballer.com, best place in the world for your daily fantasy needs. You know, Joe, I tweeted it out, and I firmly believe, especially with the no-win situation that we talked about this morning, Kapalua is, in my opinion, a top 5 worst course on the PGA Tour. It is pretty to watch. It's interesting. It's a par 73, but I mean, we're talking 150-yard wide fairways, humongous greens. So literally, it doesn't necessarily. It helps out the guys that might hit the 3 really, really bad shots around. Keeps those guys in the tournament, and really, if a guy gets hot with the putter, which is what we saw. Stupid low numbers, 34 under par, I think, 35 under, 2 people. And I think Matt Jones right behind them. So you had, Cam Smith taking home the championship. And that's another thing. I for whatever reason, can't get on board with the Cam Smith train. I should. I mean, he's a likable player. It's just, I guess more so he is a grinder. He is a streaky player. And I mentioned this morning, what do you think about him being just a little better version of Patrick Reed? Maybe not as much, bulldog as Patrick Reed seems to be in these when he gets down the stretch, but they have very, very similar skill set, Joe.
Yeah, I like that comparison. I watched a ton of golf over the weekend, man. So obviously seen a ton of Cam Smith on the coverage, but I was kind of thinking of a younger, like an old school Phil Mickelson, like just hit it everywhere, spray it everywhere off the tee. Hit some crazy recovery shots, and with just one of the sickest short games in the world, one of the best putters in the world. He certainly made everything he looked at this past week. So yeah, man, the Reed comparison's pretty neat, pretty interesting. And like I said, kind of the old school feel comes to mind when watching Cam Smith play. I'm bigger on Cam than you are, I think, AP. Been on him for about 18 months or so. Really got on him back in the fall of 2020, coming kind of back off the COVID. I know during that November Masters, I was heavily invested in Cam Smith, and I really liked him ever since. You gotta take it for what it is. He sprays it off the tee, and that can come and go, and ebb and flow. Sometimes he's hitting it better off the tee than other times. We know what type of short game he has, but what I kind of like to keep an eye on is his iron play. If those approach numbers are up for him, it's kind of a green light thing for me when I'm seeing that. And we've certainly seen it lately. Had a great fall swing, man. Probably should have been on our radars a little bit more. I did end up landing on him in a DraftKings lineup, so that was good. But maybe we didn't talk him up enough last week. I like where he is. I don't know that he can ever be a number one player in the world or a top 5 player in the world, but I think he's going to be a very good player for a long time and make some noise in major championships and big tournaments.
Yeah, I agree with you, Joe, and seems to have that, gets hot with the putter and really unconscious with the putter at times. And he's definitely a grinder. So, if he's around and on a leaderboard, he's probably not going to go anywhere. That means some things are working for him.
Just kind of circling back to when we want to target him, AP. When there's tons of room off the fairway. And we talked about some comps between Augusta and Kapalua last week on the show, and that proved to be the case. He's played really well at Augusta, obviously played well at Kapalua. So I think any courses where he's kind of got some room for air off the tee is when you want to circle Cam Smith a little bit there.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, Joe. Moving on this week, Sony Open, we go from one that I feel like is a top 5 worst character golf course to a top 5 best character golf course on tour. One of my favorite stops, Sony Open in Hawaii, played at Wahale Country Club, par 70, roughly it's going to play between 6950 and probably 7200 at some point throughout the week. Beautiful scenery, wide open palm trees down in the city. It's just a beautiful golf course. I really like everything about this golf course, and it brings out a leaderboard that I like to watch. Scores are going to be roughly around 20 under. 17 to 22 under is where the leaders fall in this week. This tournament every year. Tournament actually started back in 1965, Joe. So it's been around for quite a while. Just a huge list of very good players. In the more recent times, it's going to favor more of the guy getting the hole. And surprisingly enough, Cam Smith won back here in 2020. And that was actually a shock to me, Joe, after looking at some of these numbers. But, it doesn't surprise me at all to see, like, if you go way back, Zach Johnson, Ryan Palmer, Jimmy Walker, Matt Kuchar, Kevin Na, even going even further back, David Toms. It does not surprise me you see that kind of champion here on this golf course show. Golf course was, I think, designed in 1927, so it's 95-year-old. It's actually a par 72 for the members, Joe. It's in East Honolulu, Hawaii. And really, I can't say enough good things about this course, Joe. So why don't you take over? What do you think?
Yeah, man, it's a favorite of mine too. Seth Rayner designed this, who's a really one of the legendary golf course designers in history, really. So anytime you see a Seth Rayner golf course, it's probably going to be excellent. And I really like this one. You can argue maybe with the length, it's getting a little bit outdated. But as you mentioned, it's, 20 under, nothing like we seen last week. Some of the toughest fairways to hit on tour, just a shade over half the drives find the fairway at this golf course. You mentioned, man, Plotter's Paradise. You ran off some of the former winners here. We saw Kevin Na win last year, Kuchar, all these guys, paint by number players. We've talked about it on this show several times over the last couple of years, AP. There's 5, 6, 7 times a year where guys like Kuchar, Kevin Kisner, Kevin Na, these guys kind of get geared up for these events because it's one where they can really have a chance to win. And this week on a 7,000-yard golf course, this is definitely one of those tracks. So the whole field's in play, which kind of makes things tougher from a DFS perspective. But we also know what we're looking for. We're looking for guys that are very solid off the tee, that can find fairways. We're looking at guys that are sharp with their irons, that play par fours well. There are 10 par fours, Andrew, that measure between 400 to 500 yards on this golf course. So that's a huge percentage of the holes these guys will be playing this week are par fours in that yardage. So that's something you can look at this week. And putting, man, you hate to say it, but you got to get hot with the putter. That's tough to predict for guys like us, but Bermuda putting is going to play a role this week, and course history. I think it's a really strong predictor in this event. The last first-time winner here was Russell Henley way back in 2013. So we see guys that know this course and play well on this course, kind of continue to play well year after year. So that's something I'll be weighing this week. But looking forward to it, man. I love the Hawaii swing. I love watching golf at night here in Tennessee, and it's cold outside, and you turn it on, you see beautiful Hawaii, and sweat your lineup. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, so let's just get right in the slate, Joe, because we'll hit on a bunch of things you just talked about as we go down the slate. Cam Smith, 11-2, Matsuyama, 10-6, Webb Simpson, 10-5, Sungjae, 10-3, Leishman, 10K. I'm actually going to go ahead and scratch a couple of my guys I love, or especially one guy I love for sure, Mark Leishman. It's just too high for me, 10K, especially with the guys he's matched up against here. Also, I don't really favor Matsuyama. I don't think that necessarily his driver is going to be as big of a weapon for him as it will be on other golf courses here. Also the champion from last week, Cam Smith. Like I said, not necessarily a huge backer of his, especially if he's going to be, 600 salary dollars ahead of the second guy. So that just kind of leaves you with Webb, Simpson, and Sungjae. And based on last week, I'm all in on Sungjae in this price range. So, Joe, where can you take me from here?
Yeah, like what you had to say there, Andrew. Cam Smith, a couple strikes against him, man, coming off a win. We know that's always tough. You mentioned he did win here back in 2020, but that was kind of an outlier year, man. I don't know if you remember. I remember watching that one. The weather was nuts. The wind was crazy. First couple of rounds, it pretty well rained the entire week. Just really, really nasty. Came down to the end between Cam Smith and Brendan Steele. Ryan Palmer was in there as well on Sunday, but kind of an outlier year just with the weather there. So I almost want to cross Cam Smith off, which is really tough to say with as well as he played last week. But with him being the highest price player on the board, coming off a win, you have to imagine there'll be a little bit of a letdown there. I just don't know that you can go with Cam Smith. Maybe keep an eye on his ownership. If he's going under own, maybe hop on in GPPs, but it's not an all-in play for me. You mentioned Hideki. I was looking at Hideki earlier today, man, and like just kind of trying to wrap my head around Hideki. It always seems tough, and kind of what I came up with was like Hideki is never feels like a great play, but he also never feels like a bad play. To me, he's kind of always just a good, solid play. And that's kind of the category I'd put him in again this week. I don't know how you feel about Hideki, those thoughts on him, man. Just seems like he never really stands out. Obviously won the Masters, won the Zozo, but it had been a while between wins for him before that Masters victory. So I just don't know that the win equity's there with Hideki, even though we've seen him win a couple times over the past year. So I can take or leave Hideki this week. Webb's a course history beast, man. We're talking about course history. Webb's at the top of the list. Top 4 finishes here in each of his last 3 Sony starts. Has played extremely well here throughout the years. We know what type of player he is on these shorter golf courses. You start talking about comp courses like Harbortown. We know how Webb's played there. The Wyndham at Sedgefield is another one, shorter track. We know he's dominated there. So a lot to like about Webb. The only concern is he didn't tee it up last week. I'm going to kind of bump the guys that played in the Century. 7 of the last 8 winners of this event, Andrew, have played the Century. So that's kind of the only ding on Webb. The form we know wasn't great the latter half of last year. So you got to figure he's going to be looking to bounce back. Great play. You have to love Webb here. And all these guys above 10, man. You mentioned Sungjae. I'm always a little bit lower on Sungjae than most people, it seems like, but definitely understand it. He's a great Bermuda putter, played well last week. And then Leishman, I hear you on the price tag, but man, I like how he sets up for this course. Made 27 birdies last week at Kapalua. He's never missed a cut here in his career. So this is definitely Leishman's type of track, AP.
Yeah. And I love to play him. So, the wind will probably help his game too if it gets windy at all. Moving on to the 9K range, Kevin Na, Answer, Connors, Harrison English, Taylor Gooch. I got something to say about all these guys. Kevin Na is going to be – this is an ideal golf course for him. It's in Hawaii. Would love to go back-to-back defending champion. Abe Answer, we got to think if you look at some proximity numbers, he's pretty good at some yardages. You're going to see him out this week. And really, this is another golf course that, just like Webb Simpson, he seems to play well on tracks designed like this. Cory Connors, we're going to mention him on basically any type of golf course that there is that he's not in the top 10 price point for any tournament. And with this field, I think he's a pretty good deal, honestly. So maybe, not playing last week would hurt him. Harrison English, we just can't trust him. We definitely believe that he is a top tier talent as far as his game goes, but he's just not trustworthy. But here's a guy, and I'll talk more about him later, but here's a guy that fits the criteria, probably had the best fall swing of any player. That's Taylor Gooch. Played last week, top 15, won a few weeks ago, the RSM. Taylor Gooch has got to be, I cannot believe I'm saying this, but he's got to be the catch me out from 9,000 and all the way up to 11
Yeah, a lot to like in this range, Andrew. A lot of nice course fit, a lot of solid course history. You mentioned Kevin Na, who won here last year, always seems to play this track well. Looked good last week at Kapalua. Not that course isn't a great fit for him, but he played well. Heard him talking about playing in the QB shootout there that he won with Jason Kokrak. Kind of knocked the rust off a little bit. Was feeling good with where his game is. So, you can definitely look at Kevin Na. This is the type of track where you can play him. I'm gun shy at 9,900, especially if he's going to be popular. I probably won't be there myself. My thoughts on Na. Abe Answer, on paper, this is tremendous fit, but the results just haven't been here, man. He's played here 4 times, missed 2 cuts. I think his best finish is a T29 coming back in 2019. So while this is a great fit on paper, the results hadn't really been there for Abe, and he played horrible last week, man. I think he lost like 6 or 8 strokes tee to green for the week. Just looked terrible. His first time teeing it up for him in a couple months. So I imagine he probably hadn't been very active over the break. So maybe you got the rust knocked off. You can look for a bounce back here, but not as big on Abe as I kind of expected when I first seen that he was going to be in this field. Cory Connors, man, you love him, I love him, we love him on the show. We talk about him a lot. I'm completely fine going with him here again. Has played well in his previous trips here. Great fit. He kills golf courses under 7,200 yards. He's 3rd in this field in strokes gained tee to green on golf courses under 7,200 yards. So we love his ball striking. Just need a little bit of putting from him. You mentioned Taylor Gooch, kind of like Abe Answer. All the numbers set up well, Andrew. The form is obviously great, but the results just hadn't been here, which is really, really weird because it seems like this course is a great fit for him. Missed a couple cuts over his last 4 Sony starts. Had a T18 back in 2018. It was his best finish here. So a little bit concerned about that. But, at the end of the day, I kind of think you have to give a nod to just how well this young guy's playing. So definitely like Taylor Gooch there at 9,100, just like you said.
I agree. Moving on to the 8K range, Joe. Cam Davis, Charles Howell III, Seamus Power, EVR, McNealy, Matt Jones, who crushed last week. Henley, who's going to be hugely owned in this range. Kokrak, who had a terrible week. Horschel seems to play well on courses like this. Kisner, we got like on this course too. I think somebody will go overlooked that probably there's 2 guys in this range that I love in the cash events, Joe, and that's going to be EVR and Charles Howell. I think they're probably almost a guaranteed top 20, top 25 players. Probably have 0 win equity though, however. We know that Charles Howell III seems to play well in the first 4 months of the year, and then we never hear from him again. And this fits that as well. I hate that both of them are up in the 8s, but I still love them in cash. If I'm going kind of all out here and picking a guy that we love to play on courses similar to this, it's going to be I think GPPs. I'm looking at McNealy and Horschel. And the reason I'm not saying Henley is because I just think his ownership's going to be way too high. So what do you think about the 8K range, Joe?
Yeah, man, I think you hit the nail right on the head there with everything you said, Andrew. Kisner, this is a type of track we can play him. He looked good last week. Finished top 10 in the Century Field and strokes gained approach. Finished top 5 in putting. That's not a huge surprise, but I really like that iron play from him last week. Has played excellent on this course. This is his type of track. Kind of mentioned in the opener, this is one of those 5-6 golf courses each year where you got to feel like Kisner's licking his chops because you can really compete to win. Has finished top 5 in 40% of his career starts in this event, Andrew. So that's a pretty strong track record. Had 2 T4s in his last 5 Sony starts. So I like Kiz. He's not a guy I'm on a roster super often just because of kind of some of his shortcomings as a player, but got the green light for him this week from me. Billy Horschel, you mentioned, very streaky. He didn't look good last week at all, but we know he's one of those guys that can turn it on at any time. Like him as a GPP play, like you were saying, that would be the only way I'd have any exposure to him this week. Kokrak, I don't know that's a tremendous fit, but we did see him win at Colonial. We've seen him play well at Harbortown over the years, so even though it's kind of not happened for him on this golf course, I wouldn't rule him out, even though he did play horrible last week. Had him in a DK lineup, and he got the old DFL. So Kokrak, I'm a little mad at the moment. Russell Henley, you mentioned, I love him. I think a lot of other people will as well, just like you said, Andrew. I think he'll be extremely popular. He won here back in 2013, but had a great swing season stretch, man. In 5 fall starts, he had a top 10 and three top 25s. We know the ball striking is amazing. The approach plays great. Bermuda's his best surface. So just a ton of love with Russell Henley. The only drawback is going to be the ownership. Matt Jones, my boy, huge week last week, man. Really, really cool to see him play well. Love how fast he plays on the golf course. I wish everybody played that fast. We'd be a lot better off as viewers, and everything would go smoothly if guys played like Matt Jones. But as far as his game, he's played well here, made 4 straight cuts in the Sony, had a T11 here last year. He's a great Bermuda putter. This golf course fits him well, so you got to figure he's going to carry some positive momentum into this week. And another young guy we really like, Andrew, making his debut here, which is kind of the concern for me, is Maverick McNealy. We rostered him a lot down the stretch last year, and it paid off for us. We've seen him play well at Pebble. We've seen him play well at Harbortown. And here we are at a sub 7,200 yard golf course, a little over 7,000 yards. So Maverick McNealy's certainly in serious consideration for me this week.
Yep, I love him. I love Maverick McNealy on golf courses under 7,200 yards. So moving on the 7K range, there's a lot of people here in this range to mention, so I'm not going to go through the names. And I'm just going to throw out a few names that I'm going to pluck from out of the 7K range and really red light the rest. As much as I like Chris Kirk and Ryan Palmer up top and really Siwoo Kim on this style of golf courses, they're a no-go for me this week. The main reason I believe is because there's going to be so much value in the 6K range this week because we're going to see the debut of all the rookies basically coming up. But a couple names I will just going off proximity numbers, par 5, the ability for them to play par 5s over 400 yards, or excuse me, par 4s over 400 yards. And their par 4 scoring, and that's going to be Russell Knox at 7,100, Stuart Sink at 7,200, Joe, who also played last week, Brendan Todd at 7,500, and Tom Hogue at 7,600. Those are the names I'm only green lighting in the 7K range. Everybody else is a red light for me. Like I said, just basically because of all the value in the 6K range that we're going to see. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, we kind of diverge here a little bit, Andrew. I think we've been in agreement until we get to the 7s. I think there's tons of options here that you can go to, especially this week on this specific golf course. These guys aren't necessarily guys that you're in love with clicking their name. They don't really have flashy games, but it's what gets the job done in the Sony. You mentioned Charles Howell just hitting there at 8K. A course history maniac, man. The dude has made I don't know how many millions of dollars in this golf tournament. He's been crazy good here. So I think you can certainly look at CH3, especially in cash game stuff. If you're just looking for a cut maker, Brendan Steele. I can't really tell you why, AP, but he's been great here the last 2 years. Had a runner up in 2020, lost in a playoff to Cam Smith that year, and then had a T4 last year. So this place is just very, very good to Brendan Steele. Same can be said of Ryan Palmer, who's got very good course history. I think you can look at him. Christian Bezadenhout is an interesting player to me this week, especially at this $7,800 price tag. There are times that I would be willing to, pay mid-eights for Bezadenhout in this type of field, but he's making his course debut, which is a little worrisome. But I like the talent there with him in this field at 7,800. So he's a guy that I'm going to keep an eye on as the week progresses. Keith Mitchell's had some nice outings here. 3 top 25s in his last 4 Sony starts. We know he loves Bermuda greens. So this is the type of track I'll green like Keith Mitchell. Brendan Todd, it's a course fit for him. Kuchar is another guy that we talked about, a former winner here. His game looked a little bit better during the swing season. He was completely out of the picture last year, man, but did bounce back a little bit in the swing season for some solid outings. Denny McCarthy comes in hot. We know what type of Bermuda putter he is. He had an amazing fall season, so I think you can look at Denny. Takumi Kanaya, he hasn't played well here, missed a couple cuts, but this is a guy, former #1 amateur in the world, multiple Japan Tour wins, and he rolled off several top 10s. They're playing over there in December, and he knocked out a couple top 10s on the Japan Tour. So I think you can look at Takumi Kanaya there if you want to kind of take a shot in GPPs. Couple more guys, good course history, Pat Kazire, Emiliano Grillo. I really like Stuart Sink. You mentioned him on this golf course. Knocked the rust off last week. It's not too long for him, and he's had top 20s in his last 2 Sony starts. So I really like Stuart Sink at 7,200 as a salary saver. One of my favorite plays of the week down there. And just to close out the 7Ks, man, a young guy making his course debut. I'll say it again, that kind of worries me this week. Do prefer to lean course history, but Alex Smalley, a young player out of Duke that I really like. Played him a lot last year as he's kind of working his way on the PGA Tour, earned his tour card. I like him on this golf course.
Yeah, I don't really know much about Smalley, so I can't back you there. A lot to say about the 7K range, like you said. Our opinions differ quite a bit there.
Yeah, man, you lead the way for me here in the 6Ks because I'm kind of, I know there's a lot of names we know, but not a ton of guys I feel confident in, man. So who you locking down here?
Yeah, 6K range is going to be a little bit different. I think where I can go to get some to get. I want to say, I don't want to say necessarily get me in selection mode, but really I went to proximity, Joe. If you go to proximity and look at some numbers, you get a lot of 6K guys pop up. If you look at the 175 to 200, and you look at the 150 to the 175, there's a lot of 6K range guys that pop up. And then also, if you look at par 4 efficiency, like you said earlier, it's going to be very important. I look at 400 to 450 there. Same thing. You're going to get a lot of the 6K range guys going to pop up. So Kramer Hickok, we know what he can do. He's been a stud. Tyler Duncan, we know what he can do in the over 400 range on the par 4s. He's very, very, very skilled. If you look, Joe, on down further into the 6K range, if you look past the guys we know per se that we like, like say a Buckley, a Malinotti, Hickok, Duncan, Stanley, those are guys we know. There's also going to be a ton of rookies this week. I'm not saying, and the reason I even throw those guys out there is that they're more so going to be there for a GPP play. So if you find a couple of like David Lipsky, he's got some major talent. I like him on a course like this. I like Dylan Wu on a course like this, even like Austin Cook down there at 6,300, even though he hasn't had great success. We can go, if we go a little bit on the vet side, you got Wesley Bryan, Richie Lewinsky. Those guys can still get there. Brian Gay too. I don't want to put a ton. He just turned 50, I think. I don't want to put a ton of stock in him. But there's definitely some names that we could at least look at in the 6K range, even if we don't even know them. Just pop up on some proximity numbers, par 4 scoring. If anybody pops out to you, just plug them in a few lineups and see what happens.
Yeah. At this point in the year, man, not a ton of statistical data to go off of, especially for these Corn Ferry Tour guys who've just been on the tour for a very short window of time during the swing season. So, I think the talent coming up from the Corn Ferry Tour, man, is the best we've seen in years and years. And that tour only keeps getting better. College golf keeps getting better. So I think these guys are going to make an impact quicker in their careers. I do have some concerns about just how well guys with course experience play in this event. That's kind of the only drawback. I love jumping on these young guys, but makes me a little bit reluctant this week with this layout. It's certainly not a bomb and gouge course. Like a lot of the layouts on the PGA Tour and a lot of the layouts on the Corn Ferry Tour, these guys go out there, bomb driver, hit wedge, and see who can make some putts. But that's not what they're going to find this week. So there's some talented young guys. You mentioned a couple of them. I'll mention a couple. Cameron Young, Grayson Sigg, who's a kind of a favorite of mine. Hayden Buckley, we saw notch a couple of top 10s during the swing season. Nick Hardy, Monday qualified for this event last year, had a T14. I like his game. So, there's definitely some ways you can go with some of these younger guys down here. And then we got kind of the vets. It's a really interesting juxtaposition of older guys kind of past their prime and young guys trying to find their way. You got Rory Sabatini, Brant Snedeker, couple of cagey veterans who could sneak up on you and play well. Hudson Swafford is a guy that I looked at. Very good course history. We know he's on a guy we can pull the trigger on just anywhere, but like him on this layout. Saw a couple of flashes late in the year last year, so I'll be looking at Hudson Swafford, especially as a GPP play. You start talking about trying to save some salary. We're going to have to dip down here a little bit in GPPs. So I wouldn't mind giving him a look. You mentioned Pete Malnati, a couple of top 14s in his last 2 Sony starts. He's streaky. He gets hot with the putter. Some things can happen. Mark Hubbard's another guy you can say the same for. Pat Perez, another vet. Your guy, Ryan Moore's down here. So I think as the week goes on, you mentioned, Andrew, look at proximity. Dial in on that. The 125 to 200 yard ranges are very important this week. Look at that par 4 scoring. Look at Bermuda putting. And just a quick shout out, man. It's not anything in it for us, but if you don't have Fantasy National and you're listening to this podcast, you're obviously kind of getting interested in PGA DFS. Give some serious thought to signing up for Fantasy National. Really one of the best sites out there, kind of one of the statistical backbones of the research process for us and tons of other PGA DFS players. So just a shout out to them. Like I said, not a promo, nothing in it for us, but give Fantasy National a look if you're going to play a lot of PGA DFS this year.
No, I agree, Joe. I agree. So if we look down here in the 6K range, we got to shoot from the hip, go with a dart play of the week. I want to slide up to the 7K range, but I feel like you're going to get I feel like that's kind of cheating a little bit. So I'm going to stay down here in the 6K range, and I'm going to throw out a couple names for you just because we got, of course, somebody with a little bit more experience and then a newer guy. Grayson Sigg, I love him as far as a rookie goes. Did not play well in the fall, but this is a new year. He's trying to get his feet wet. And we know once he gets comfortable, he's going to be somebody to reckon with, especially on golf courses that like this. Another player I'm going to go as far as we get a little bit of vet, and that's somebody that's had success here in the past, and that's somebody that's got East Tennessee ties. That's Pete Malnati. If he gets that putter hot, he can do a lot of things on courses like this, especially I'll say this, Joe. He also played fairly poorly in the fall. However, played a little better in the last event of the fall. So that's my dart play of the week. If I'm sliding up to got $5 left in the drawer next to the bed, and I got to bet it all in, I'm gonna throw a couple names out here too. If I'm going with course history and somebody just we know that's just solid, and that's got to be. And I'm not saying he's gonna win, but it's Cory Connors, 9,600. But if I'm wanting to push the chips in and maybe make a little bit, Taylor Gooch, man, has been just as of the last 4 months. He's played great last week. So I just see that to continue. So if I've got to put some chips on the table, I'm probably playing Taylor Gooch this week.
Yeah, I really like it, man. Tough to argue with Taylor Gooch, and you know how I feel about Connors. So good call on both great ball strikers. I think they'll play well this week. If I'm going dart throw, I'll kind of follow your lead, man. I'll throw out a couple names. One vet, one young. I like Stuart Sink. I like his course history. Like he got some reps in last week at Kapalua. Looked pretty solid over there. And it's just a nice course fit for him, man. We've talked about comps kind of the whole show. His last win came at the Heritage at Harbortown. Pretty similar golf course, kind of in lots of ways. So I like Stuart Sink at 7,200. And my young guy, I'll go Alex Smalley down there at 7K, making his course debut. But I like his game. I like his talent. I think this is going to be a good fit for him. My heart, I hear you on the price, man. I like Mark Leishman. He was actually my dart last week. So what a difference a week makes, Andrew. We saw Leishman at 7,600 last week and 10K this week. I think that price tag might be tough for some people to swallow. So I'm going to keep an eye on him, see where his ownership is, but definitely like Mark Leishman here a lot. So that'll be my heart play this week.
Yeah. By the way, love Stuart Sink this week. I mean, you get some pretty decent odds on him and maybe cash a pretty good check.
Yeah, I like Russell Henley a lot too. We talked about him, but like you said, man, I think he's just going to be super chalky. So I don't know what you can do as far as ownership there. It's going to kind of restrict you. But I like Henley, like a lot of guys in the 8K range.
I agree, Joe. All right, guys. Thanks, Joe, for coming on talking to me. Oh, T-shirt. I forgot. We about forgot.
We almost forgot again. Almost forgot again. Yeah. You got the winner over there. Tell us who's winning the. We got a pretty cool T-shirt. The Turn logo. It's we kind of want to do the Hawaii thing, so we got a black and pink logo T-shirt for somebody. And to win, you had to be a YouTube subscriber. We're going to do a couple more of those this year. Tell us who's the winner, AP.
The winner this week is none other than Knoxville's very own and a friend of mine, actually, Mark Hahn. Mark Hahn, you are a winner for the free T-shirt giveaway. I'll get with you and get that shirt to you, buddy. So appreciate everybody subscribing. Appreciate everybody the likes, sharing with friends. And reach out to us if you have any questions. We're all over Twitter. We're going to be, we'll argue and go back and forth and whatnot. Yeah, just reach out to us. Appreciate you, Joe, and everything you do at rotoballer.com. Guys, I'm Andrew Putters. That's Joe Nicely. And you have listened to the Turn Fantasy Golf Podcast.
It's gonna drive